The stars looked cold and distant through the bridge windows of the Dominion's edge. Admiral Kethva stood with his 4 arms crossed behind his back, watching the endless darkness of space. His crystalline skin caught the light from the control panels, making him look like a living statue made of purple glass. The Zeltharian Empire had ruled this part of the galaxy for 3,000 years. Their ships controlled the trade routes between 1,000 different worlds. Alien races paid taxes to the Empire or faced destruction. It was a simple system that had worked for centuries. Kethvar had commanded fleets for 200 years. He had crushed rebellions, conquered new worlds, and brought order to chaos. Today should have been like any other day of patrol duty in the Andromeda sector. The warning alarm broke the peaceful silence on the bridge. "Admiral," called Officer Vextal from the sensor station, "we have detected an unknown vessel at the edge of the system." Kethvar turned around, his black eyes focusing on the main display screen. A small dot appeared on the star map, positioned near the outer asteroid belt. The computer tried to analyze the ship, but could not identify its design or origin. "Show me the details," Kethvar ordered. The screen changed to show a closer view of the mysterious ship. It was unlike anything in their vast database of known vessels. The hull was completely black and seemed to absorb light instead of reflecting. The shape was smooth and sleek, like a knife blade floating in space. Size estimates showed as roughly the same length as a heavy cruiser, Vextal reported. But the energy readings are strange, sir. We can barely detect any power signatures from the vessel. Kethvar studied the image with growing interest. In 3,000 years of empire, they had cataloged every known ship design in the galaxy. Pirates, rebels, and foreign powers all used variations of the same basic technology. But this ship was completely different. Could it be a new rebel design? Asked Commander Zulmar, the ship's second in command. Unlikely, Kethvar replied. The rebels steal our old ships or build crude copies. This appears to be advanced technology. Far across the solar system, Captain Jake Morrison sat in the command chair of the Shadow's Edge. The bridge was dark, except for the soft glow of computer screens. Unlike the bright, ceremonial bridges of Zeltharian warships, this was built for function over beauty. Morrison was a tall man with short brown hair and calm blue eyes. He had been fighting the Zeltharians for 2 years, ever since they had enslaved the human colonies in the Outer Rim. His ship was humanity's first prototype stealth destroyer, built in secret shipyards hidden in asteroid fields. "Captain, we're picking up increased activity from the Zeltharian fleet," reported Navigator Amy Collins. She was a young woman with red hair tied back in a practical ponytail. Her fingers moved quickly across the navigation console. "They've spotted us," Morrison said calmly. "How long until they reach weapons range?" Chief Engineer Pete Walker looked up from his station. He was an older man with gray hair and hands that always seemed to be covered in grease from working on the ship's engines. "The cloaking system is holding steady, but I'm reading some power fluctuations in the secondary generators," Morrison nodded. The Shadow's Edge carried technology that the Zeltharians had never seen before. While their ships relied on energy, shields and plasma weapons, human engineers had developed kinetic weapons that fired solid projectiles at incredible speeds. "Lisa, are the railguns ready?" Morrison asked. Weapons Officer Lisa Hayes turned from her console. She was a serious woman with dark hair and sharp green eyes. "All weapons systems are online and ready, Captain. We have a full load of tungsten rounds." The Zeltharians had enslaved 12 human colonies, treating Earth's scattered children like mining equipment. They forced humans to work in dangerous conditions, extracting rare metals from hostile worlds. Families were separated. Children grew up as slaves. But the Zeltharians had made one crucial mistake. They had never found Earth itself. They had no idea that humanity's whole world had spent the last 50 years preparing for war. Communications? Any word from the fleet? Morrison asked Sam Martinez, a young man with black hair and nervous energy. Shook his head. Nothing from command, sir. We're still operating under radio silence. Morrison understood. The Shadow's Edge was alone, deep in enemy territory. The main human fleet was still months away from being ready for a full assault. Until then, it was up to small ships like his to weaken the Empire through hit-and-run attacks. Dr. Kate Phillips, the ship's science officer, looked up from her research station. She was a woman in her 30s, with blonde hair and intelligent brown eyes. Captain, I'm detecting multiple Zeltharian ships moving toward our position. It looks like they're sending a patrol squadron to investigate. How many ships? Morrison asked. 3 heavy cruisers and at least 12 fighter craft, Phillips replied. Morrison did some quick math in his head. The Zeltharian ships had superior numbers and firepower. In a straight fight, the Shadow's Edge would be destroyed in minutes. But this would not be a straight fight. Pete, engage the cloaking system, Morrison ordered. Walker's hands moved across his console. Cloaking system online. We're invisible to their sensors now. On the main display, the approaching Zeltharian ships suddenly lost track of their target. The mysterious vessel had simply vanished from their screens. Amy, plot us a course through the asteroid field, Morrison continued. We'll use the rocks for cover and pick our targets carefully. Collins nodded and began working on the navigation. Computer. Course plotted, Captain. We can approach from their blind spot. Morrison looked around at his crew. These 47 men and women were about to take on an entire alien empire. They were outnumbered 1,000,000 to 1. Their ship was experimental and untested in real combat. But they were human, and humans had a long history of winning fights they were supposed to lose. All stations, prepare for combat, Morrison announced. Let's show these aliens what happens when they mess with our people. The Shadow's Edge began moving through the darkness, invisible to enemy sensors. Behind them, the Zeltharian patrol squadron spread out in a search pattern, looking for a ghost. Ship that was already moving to strike. The war for human freedom was about to begin. Admiral Keffer watched the tactical display with growing frustration. The mysterious ship had completely disappeared from their sensors. One moment it was there, the next it was gone like it had never existed. Expand the search pattern, he ordered. Send Squadron Leader Morvik with 3 cruisers and a full fighter wing. I want that vessel found and identified. Commander Zulmar looked concerned. Sir, should we not request reinforcements from the home fleet? This unknown technology could be dangerous. Kethver's crystalline features showed contempt. 3 cruisers. Against 1 ship of unknown origin? The Empire does not cower from shadows, Commander. Squadron Leader Morvik received his orders aboard the heavy cruiser Stellar Hammer. He was a veteran of many battles, scarred from fighting rebel uprisings across the outer systems. His ship was one of the Empire's finest, armed with plasma, cannons that could melt through any known armor. All ships maintain formation. Morvik broadcast to his squadron. Deploy fighters in a wide search grid. The target cannot have gone far. The 3 Zeltharian cruisers moved through space like floating cities. Each ship was over 1 kilometer long, covered in weapon batteries and shield generators. 12 sleek. Fighters spread out around them, their sensors scanning for any trace of the vanished vessel. Captain Morrison watched the enemy formation approach through the shadows. Edge's passive sensors. The Zeltharians were being predictable, following standard search protocols that human intelligence had studied for years. Distance to target? Morrison asked quietly. Navigator Amy Collins checked her instruments. 2,000 kilometers and... Closing. There'll be an optimal firing range in 3 minutes. The bridge was silent except for the soft hum of life support systems. The crew worked at their stations with calm efficiency. They had trained for this moment for months. "Lisa, target the lead cruiser," Morrison ordered. "Wait for my command." Weapons Officer Lisa Hayes programmed the targeting computer. The shadows. Edge carried 6 railgun cannons, each capable of firing tungsten slugs at 30% of light speed. The projectiles were simple pieces of metal, but at those velocities, they carried more destructive power than any plasma weapon. Chief Engineer Pete Walker monitored the cloaking system carefully. "Power levels are stable, Captain. We can maintain invisibility for another 40 minutes at current consumption." Dr. Kate Phillips studied the enemy ships through her scanners. "I'm reading standard Zeltharian energy shields on all vessels. Their defensive systems are designed to deflect plasma and laser weapons." Morrison nodded. The aliens had never encountered kinetic weapons before. Their shields would be useless against solid projectiles. Squadron leader Morvek grew increasingly frustrated as his ships found nothing. The mysterious vessel had vanished completely. His sensors showed only empty space and drifting asteroids. "Continue the search," he commanded. "Deploy active scanners. If there is a ship out there, we will find it." The Zeltharian cruisers began broadcasting powerful sensor beams in all directions. The energy pulses lit up space like searchlights, looking for any hidden object. On the shadow's edge, warning lights flashed on the sensor station. "Captain, they're using active scanners," reported Communications Officer Sam Martinez. "High energy. Pulses. They're trying to burn through our cloaking." Morrison checked the tactical display. The enemy ships were still in formation, perfect targets for a surprise attack. "Pete, can the cloaking hold?" Walker studied his readouts. "For now, yes. But those scanner pulses are putting stress on the system." "We don't need long," Morrison said. He activated the ship's communication system. "All hands, this is the captain. We are about to engage the enemy. Remember your training, and remember why we're here." The crew members at their stations straightened up. They thought about the human colonies suffering under alien rule. They thought about families torn apart and children growing up as slaves. "Lisa, you have permission to fire when ready," Morrison said. Hayes made final adjustments to the targeting system. The lead Zeltharian cruiser filled her crosshairs, completely unaware of the danger approaching from the darkness. "Firing," Hayes announced. The shadow's edge shuddered slightly as 6 railgun cannons fired in sequence. The tungsten projectiles shot through space faster than the human eye could follow. At 30% light speed, they crossed the distance. To target in less than 2 seconds. Squadron leader Morvik saw the first impacts on his tactical display. Bright flashes appeared along the stellar hammer's hull as the kinetic rounds punched through the energy shields like they were not even there. The tungsten slugs carried so much energy that they turned the ship's armor into plasma on contact. Massive holes appeared in the cruiser's hull. Internal explosions began tearing the vessel apart from the inside. "Shield failure," screamed the Stellar Hammer's weapons officer. "We're taking massive damage. I don't understand how they're getting through our defenses." Morvik watched in horror as his flagship began breaking apart. Emergency alarms sounded throughout the ship. Sections of the hull were venting atmosphere into space. "All ships return fire," Morvek ordered. "Target the source of those attacks." But the Zeltharian weapons had nothing to aim at. Their sensors still showed empty space. The mysterious ship remained completely invisible. The shadow's edge had already moved to a new position after firing. The cloaking system kept them hidden as they lined up their next target. "Second cruiser is in range," reported Hayes. "Fire," Morrison ordered. Another barrage of kinetic rounds hammered into the second Zeltharian cruiser. The alien ship's shields flickered and failed, as tungsten projectiles tore through its hull. Secondary explosions rippled along its weapon. Batteries dot the 12 Zeltharian fighters, scattered in panic. Their pilots had never faced an invisible enemy before. They fired randomly into space, hoping to hit something they could not see. "This is impossible," Morvek shouted over the communication channel. "How can they be everywhere and nowhere?" The third cruiser tried to retreat, but it was too late. The Shadow's edge had already repositioned for the killing blow. 6 more railgun rounds found their target, turning the alien warship into expanding. Debris dot in less than 5 minutes. The entire Zeltharian squadron had been destroyed. Morvek's ship was gone. The other cruisers were either destroyed or crippled beyond repair. Most of the fighters had been caught in the explosions of their larger ships. Captain Morrison watched the destruction on his tactical display. He felt no satisfaction in the killing, only grim determination. Every alien ship destroyed meant fewer weapons pointed at human colonies. "Damage report," Morrison requested. Chief Walker checked his systems. "No damage to report, Captain. All systems operating normally." Dr. Phillips studied the battle data. "The Zeltharians never even saw us. Their targeting systems were completely blind." Morrison nodded. The first test of human stealth technology had been a complete success. But this was only the beginning. "Amy, plot a course out of the system," Morrison ordered. "We need to be gone before the reinforcements arrive." Collins worked quickly at her navigation station. "Course laid in, Captain. We can reach the jump point in 6 hours." As the Shadow's edge moved away from the battle site, Morrison thought about what came next. The Zeltharian Empire would soon learn that something new had entered their territory. Something they could not see, could not track, and could not stop. The age of invisible warfare had begun. The news reached Admiral Kethvar 6 hours after the attack. 3 heavy cruisers destroyed, 12 fighters missing. Squadron leader Morvek dead. No survivors. No distress calls. No explanation. Kethvar stared at the report on his command screen. In 200 years of military service, he had never seen anything like this. Ships did not simply vanish without a trace. "Show me the debris field," he ordered. The main display changed to show the battle site. Twisted metal drifted through space where proud warships had been. The wreckage was scattered across thousands of kilometers. Whatever had attacked his ships had done so with overwhelming force. Analysis? Kethvar demanded. Commander Zulmar looked nervous. "The damage patterns are unlike anything we have seen before. No plasma burns, no laser scoring, just massive holes punched clean through the hulls." "Kinetic weapons," suggested Science Officer Nelter. "Solid projectiles moving at extreme velocity." Kethvar's crystalline features darkened. "Impossible. No known race uses kinetic weapons. They are primitive and inefficient." But the evidence was there in the wreckage. Whatever had destroyed his squadron had used weapons that his shields could not stop. Across the galaxy, similar reports began reaching Zeltharian command centers. Supply convoys were disappearing between star systems. Mining stations went silent. Without warning, border patrol ships failed to report in. The pattern was always the same. Ships would vanish completely, leaving only debris fields behind. No one ever saw the attacker. No one survived to describe what had happened. Captain Morrison studied the tactical reports in his ready room aboard the Shadow's Edge. Dr. Kate Phillips sat across from his desk, analyzing intelligence data they had gathered from intercepted Zeltharian communications. "They're starting to panic," Phillips reported. "I'm seeing increased radio traffic across all their military channels. They're pulling ships back from outer patrol routes." Morrison nodded with satisfaction. "Fear is our greatest weapon right now. As long as they can't see us coming, they have to assume we could be anywhere." The Shadow's Edge had been operating behind enemy lines for 3 weeks now. They moved from system to system, striking without warning and vanishing before reinforcements could arrive. The crew had perfected their hit-and-run tactics. "Captain," called Navigator Amy Collins from the bridge, "we're approaching the Kelvara system. Intelligence reports a major supply depot on the 4th planet." Morrison stood up and walked to the bridge. The crew was at their stations, professional and focused. They had become experts at invisible warfare. "What kind of defenses?" Morrison asked. Collins checked her scanner readings. 2 escort cruisers and a defensive platform. Standard protection for a supply depot. Chief Engineer Pete Walker looked up from his station. "The cloaking system is running perfectly, Captain. We could get within a few 100 kilometers before they even know we're there." Morrison considered the tactical situation. The Zeltharians were getting paranoid, but they had not yet figured out how to fight an enemy they could not see. "Lisa, prep the rail guns," Morrison ordered. "We'll take out the defensive platform first, then the escort ships." "Weapons officer." Lisa Hayes ran through her targeting checklist. "All weapons ready, Captain. We have enough ammunition for a sustained engagement." The Shadow's Edge moved through the Kelvara system like a ghost. Their cloaking technology made them invisible to every type of sensor the Zeltharians possessed. The enemy ships continued their patrol routes, completely unaware of the danger approaching. On the supply depot's defensive platform, Commander Tolvex monitored the routine traffic around the planet. Cargo ships came and went, carrying supplies to military bases throughout the sector. It was boring duty, but someone had to do it. The first sign of trouble was when the cargo ship, Abundant Harvest, exploded without warning. One moment it was approaching the docking bay, the next it was expanding debris. "What happened?" Tolvex demanded. His sensor operator frantically worked the controls. "Unknown, sir. I show no hostile contacts in the area." Before Tolvex could respond, the defensive platform shuddered under multiple impacts. Alarms blared throughout the station as atmosphere began venting from dozens of hull breaches. The 2 escort cruisers, Bright Spear and Iron Shield, moved to assist the platform. Their captains had no idea what they were fighting, but they knew their duty. Captain Morrison watched the enemy ships scramble to respond to his attack. The Zeltharians were brave. He had to give them credit for that. But bravery was not enough against an invisible enemy. "Second target acquired," reported Hayes. "Fire at will," Morrison replied. The railguns spoke again, sending tungsten death through the vacuum. The escort cruiser Bright Spear took 6 direct hits and broke apart like a toy. The Iron Shield tried to retreat, but suffered the same fate. In 15 minutes, the entire Kelvara defense force had been destroyed. The supply depot was left undefended, its warehouses full of weapons and equipment that would never reach the front lines. Communications. Officer Sam Martinez intercepted the emergency broadcasts from the depot. "They're calling for help, Captain. Requesting immediate reinforcement." "Let them call," Morrison said. "By the time help arrives, we'll be long gone." Dr. Phillips studied the sensor readings from the battle. "Captain, I'm detecting something interesting. The cloaking system isn't just hiding us from their sensors. It's creating false returns." Morrison looked at her with interest. "Explain." "The Zeltharians are picking up ghost images on their screens." Phillips continued. "They think they're seeing multiple ships when there's only one of us." Chief Walker grinned. "So they think we have a whole fleet out here?" "Exactly," Phillips replied. "Their own paranoia is working against them." Morrison realized the implications immediately. If the Zeltharians believed they were facing multiple invisible ships, they would have to spread their forces even thinner to defend against attacks that might come from anywhere. "How many ghost ships are they seeing?" Morrison asked. Phillips checked her instruments. Based on their radio chatter, they think there are at least 6 phantom vessels operating in this sector. Morrison smiled for the first time in weeks. Human technology was not just giving them an advantage. It was driving the enemy insane with fear and uncertainty. Set course for the Nexus trade route, Morrison ordered. If they want to see ghosts, let's give them something to really be afraid of. The Shadow's Edge turned away from the destroyed supply depot and headed for deep space. Behind them, rescue ships would find only wreckage and terrified survivors who spoke of invisible attackers. The Zeltharian Empire was beginning to learn what it meant to fight an enemy that could strike anywhere, anytime, without warning. They had ruled the galaxy through fear for 3,000 years. Now it was their turn to be afraid. Emperor Zethmer sat on his crystal throne in the capital city of Zelthara Prime. His forearms gripped the armrests as he listened to the latest reports from across his empire. The news was all bad. 7 more supply convoys lost this week, reported General Caxarin. The phantom ships struck in 3 different sectors simultaneously. Zethmer's black eyes reflected the light from the throne room's massive windows. For 3,000 years, his empire had known only victory. Now something was tearing it apart from the inside. "How many ships have we lost?" the emperor asked. "Over 200 vessels in the past month," Caxarin replied grimly. "Heavy cruisers, destroyers, supply ships, even some of our newest battleships. Nothing seems able to stand against these invisible attackers." The emperor stood up, his crystalline form towering over his advisors. "Have we identified the source of these attacks?" "No, my lord. The ships appear to be using advanced stealth technology. Our best scientists cannot explain how they remain hidden from our sensors." Admiral Kethvar entered the throne room, his purple skin darker than usual. He had lost more ships than any other commander, but the emperor still valued his experience. "Admiral, report," Zethmer commanded. "The situation is getting worse, my lord," Kethvar said. "Colonial governors are abandoning their posts. Trade has stopped on the outer rim. Some systems are declaring independence." Zethmer felt rage building in his chest. "Independence? From the Empire? They claim we can no longer protect them from the Phantom Fleet," Kethvar explained. "Without our ships to defend the trade routes, they see no benefit in remaining loyal." In the depths of space, the Shadow's Edge continued its campaign of terror. Captain Morrison had perfected the art of invisible warfare. His ship would appear without warning, strike hard, and vanish before the enemy could respond. The crew worked with deadly efficiency. They had become legends among themselves, the ghost ship that could be everywhere and nowhere. Target acquired, reported Weapons Officer Lisa Hayes. Zeltharian battleship Eternal Glory, escorting a supply convoy in the Helix Nebula. Morrison studied the tactical display. The Eternal Glory was one of the Empire's newest ships, heavily armed and well defended. Under normal circumstances, it would be suicide for a single ship to attack such a target. But these were not normal circumstances. "Range to target?" Morrison asked. Navigator Amy Collins checked her instruments. 8,000 kilometers and closing. They haven't detected us yet. Chief Engineer Pete Walker monitored the cloaking system. "All systems green, Captain. We're completely invisible to their sensors." Dr. Kate Phillips studied the enemy formation. The battleship is using a standard escort pattern. 6 fighters on patrol, 2 destroyers flanking the convoy. Morrison planned his attack carefully. The key was to hit multiple targets quickly, creating maximum confusion before the enemy could coordinate a response. "Lisa, I want simultaneous strikes on the battleship and both destroyers," Morrison ordered. "Sam, jam their communications the moment we open fire." Communications Officer Sam Martinez prepared his electronic warfare systems. "Ready to block all their radio traffic, Captain." The shadow's edge moved closer to its targets. The Zeltharian ships maintained their formation, completely unaware of the death approaching through the darkness. All weapons locked on target. Hayes reported. "Fire," Morrison commanded. 6 railgun rounds slammed into the Eternal Glory's hull. The kinetic impacts sent shockwaves through the massive ship, cracking its armor and punching holes in its weapon batteries. Emergency lights flashed across the battleship's bridge as damage reports flooded in dot at the same time. The 2 escort destroyers suffered similar attacks. Their smaller hulls could not absorb as much damage as the battleship. Both ships began breaking apart under the kinetic bombardment. Captain Valtar of the Eternal Glory tried to coordinate a response, but his communications were being jammed. He could not contact his escorts or call for reinforcement. "Where are they?" Valtar shouted. "I see no enemy ships on our sensors." His weapons officer frantically worked the targeting controls. "Unknown, sir. Our systems show empty space." The Shadow's edge had already moved to a new position. The cloaking system kept them hidden as they lined up for another attack run. "Second barrage ready," Hayes announced. Morrison watched the enemy battleship struggle to locate his ship. Fire. More. Kinetic rounds hammered into the Eternal Glory. This time they found the ship's main reactor. Massive explosions rippled through the battleships. HULL as its power core went critical. Captain Valtar had just enough time to see his ship tearing itself apart before the bridge exploded around him. The supply convoy scattered in all directions. Cargo ships and tankers fled toward the nearest jump points, abandoning their military escort. The convoy's goods would never reach their destination. Morrison studied the battle results with satisfaction. Another successful raid. Another blow against the Empire's ability to supply its forces. But the real victory was psychological. Word of these attacks was spreading throughout Zeltharian space. Fear was becoming their greatest weapon. "Intercepting enemy communications," reported Martinez. "They're calling us the Death Shadow now. Some ships are refusing to leave port." Dr. Phillips looked up from her analysis station. "Captain, I'm seeing interesting patterns in their military deployments. They're pulling ships back from the Zel frontier to protect core systems." Morrison realized what this meant. The Zeltharians were abandoning the outer colonies to concentrate their remaining forces around important worlds. The Empire was contracting, giving up territory it had held for centuries. "They're scared," observed Chief Walker. "A scared enemy makes mistakes." Morrison nodded. Fear was indeed their greatest ally. Every Zeltharian ship captain now had to wonder if invisible death was lurking in the darkness around them. "Set course for the Vega Trade Nexus," Morrison ordered. "If they want to pull back their forces, let's make them regret leaving their shipping lanes undefended." The Shadow's edge turned toward its next target. Behind them, rescue ships would find the wreckage of the Eternal Glory and its escorts. More proof that nowhere in Zeltharian space was safe. Back on Zelthar Prime, Emperor Zethmer received the latest battle reports. The loss of the Eternal Glory was a severe blow. It had been one of his most powerful ships. "How many phantom ships do our intelligence services estimate we are facing?" the Emperor asked. General Caxarin consulted his datapad. "Based on the attack patterns, our analysts believe there are at least 12 invisible vessels operating throughout the Empire." The Emperor's crystalline features grew darker. 12 ships were destroying his empire. 12 ships were undoing 3,000 years of conquest. "Double the escort strength for all convoys," Zethmer ordered. "No ship travels alone. I want battleships protecting every supply run." But even as he gave the orders, the Emperor knew it might not be enough. How do you fight an enemy you cannot see? How do you defeat ships that can strike anywhere without warning? For the first time in his long reign, Zethmer began to understand what it meant to be afraid. Emperor Zethmer made a decision that would change the course of galactic history. He called back every ship in the Zeltharian fleet, every cruiser, every destroyer, every fighter. Over 3,000 vessels gathered around the capital world of Zelthara Prime. If these phantom ships want to fight, the Emperor declared, they will face the full might of the Empire. Admiral Kethver stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the largest military fleet in galactic history form up. Around him, massive battleships hung in space like floating cities. Cruiser squadrons stretched from horizon to horizon. The combined firepower could destroy entire worlds. "Surely they will not dare attack us here," said Commander Zulmar. No force in the galaxy could stand against this fleet. Kethver was not so certain. The phantom ships had proven they could appear anywhere, anytime. But even invisible vessels had limits. Even ghosts could not fight 3,000 ships at once. Captain Morrison stood on the bridge of the Shadow's Edge, studying the intelligence reports. The entire Zeltharian fleet was concentrated in one system. It was either the perfect trap or the perfect opportunity. "They're scared," observed Dr. Kate Phillips. "Pulling every ship back to defend the capital shows how desperate they've become." Morrison nodded. The psychological warfare had worked better than he had hoped. The mighty Zeltharian Empire was cowering behind the largest fleet in history. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission from Earth Command," reported Communications Officer Sam Martinez Morrison. "Walk to the communication station. Put it through." The message was brief and coded. Admiral Stevens of Earth Fleet was ordering the Shadow's Edge to withdraw to a safe distance. The main human fleet was finally ready to begin operations. But Morrison had a different idea. "Dr. Phillips, how are those modifications to the cloaking system coming?" Morrison asked. Phillips looked up from her workstation. "I've been running simulations all week. Theoretically, we could project false sensor images on a much larger scale." "How much larger?" "Instead of making them think they see 6 ships, we could make them see 600, maybe even 6,000. Morrison felt a plan forming in his mind. The Zeltharians expected the Phantom Fleet to attack their capital. What if he gave them exactly what they feared most? "Can we make it look like an entire human armada is dropping out of hyperspace?" Morrison asked. Phillips worked quickly at her computer. "Yes, but it would drain our power reserves completely. We'd have maybe 10 minutes before the illusion collapsed." Chief Engineer Pete Walker looked concerned. "Captain, if we burn out the cloaking system, we'll be sitting ducks. That entire fleet will be able to see us." Morrison studied the tactical display showing the Zeltharian forces. 3,000 ships waiting for an attack that would come from an unexpected direction. "Sometimes, the best way to win a war is to make the enemy defeat themselves," Morrison said. He activated the ship's communication system. "All hands, this is the captain. We are about to attempt something that has never been tried before. In a few hours, we're going to end this war." Navigator Amy Collins plotted a course toward the edge of the Zelthara system. "Jump coordinates laid in, Captain. We can drop out of hyperspace right on top of their fleet." Weapons Officer Lisa Hayes checked her systems. "All railguns loaded and ready, though I'm not sure what good they'll do against 3,000 ships." Morrison smiled. "We're not going to fight them, Lisa. We're going to scare them to death." The Shadow's Edge jumped to hyperspace, beginning its final approach to the Zeltharian capital. The crew worked to prepare the modified cloaking system for the most ambitious deception in military history. Emperor Zethmer waited on his throne, surrounded by his advisors and generals. Reports flowed in from the fleet commanders. All ships were in position. All weapons were ready. The Empire would make its final stand. "My lord," called the palace communications officer, "we're detecting a hyperspace disturbance at the edge of the system." Zethmer stood up. How many ships? The officer's voice shook as he read the sensor data. The readings are impossible. My lord, our computers are detecting over 5,000 vessels dropping out of hyperspace. Silence filled the throne room. 5,000 ships was more than the entire Zaltharian fleet. If the humans had that kind of military power, the war was already lost. Admiral Kethvar received the same sensor readings on his flagship. His bridge crew stared in horror at the tactical display. The enemy fleet filled their screens like a swarm of deadly insects. All ships prepare for battle, Kethvar ordered, but his voice lacked confidence. How could they fight such overwhelming numbers? Captain Morrison watched the false fleet appear on his own sensors. Dr. Phillips had done excellent work. The illusion was perfect. Even he would have believed it was real if he did not know better. The Zaltharian fleet is breaking formation, reported Collins. Some ships are trying to retreat. Morrison could see the panic spreading through the enemy ranks. Ships that had served the Empire for centuries were turning away from the fight. The psychological pressure was too much. Open a channel to the entire Zaltharian fleet, Morrison ordered. Martinez worked his controls. Channel open, Captain. Morrison took a deep breath. The fate of the galaxy depended on the next few minutes. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth Defense Force, he announced. You are facing the full military might of humanity. Your empire is surrounded and outgunned. On Zelthara Prime, Emperor Zethmer listened to the human voice with growing despair. The phantom ships had been just the beginning. Now the real human fleet had arrived. We demand the immediate surrender of all Zaltharian forces, Morrison continued. Release all human colonies. Pay reparations for your crimes. Accept the independence of all conquered worlds. Admiral Kethvar watched his fleet continue to break apart. Ships were fleeing in all directions. Others were broadcasting surrender signals. The largest military force in galactic history was destroying itself without firing a shot. All ships, hold your positions. Kethvar ordered, but it was too late. Fear had taken hold. His captains could not face the thought of fighting 5,000 invisible ships that Emperor Zethmer slumped in his throne. 3,000 years of empire were ending before his eyes. The humans had not just defeated his military forces. They had broken his people's will to fight. Open a channel to the human fleet. Zethmer ordered with a heavy voice. The communication officer established the connection. The Emperor's words would be broadcast across the galaxy. This is Emperor Zethmer of the Zaltharian Empire, he began. We ... We accept your terms. The Empire surrenders. All occupied worlds are hereby granted independence. We will pay reparations. As demanded. Captain Morrison felt a moment of triumph, but also sadness. The war was over, but at such a cost in lives and suffering. The surrender is accepted, Morrison replied. Withdraw your forces to your home systems. The age of the Zaltharian Empire is over. As the false human fleet began to fade from the sensors, Morrison made one final transmission. This one was directed only to the Zaltharian leadership. 4. The record, Morrison said. You were not defeated by 5,000 ships. You were defeated by one vessel with a crew of 47 humans who refused to let our people remain enslaved. The revelation sent shockwaves through the Zaltharian command structure. One ship, 47 people. They had brought down the mightiest empire in galactic history. Dr. Phillips powered down the cloaking system as the last of the false fleet disappeared. The illusion is complete, Captain. We're running on emergency power. Morrison looked around at his crew. They had done the impossible. They had won a war against impossible odds through courage, technology, and the willingness to never give up. Set course for Earth, Morrison ordered. It's time to go home. The Shadow's edge turned away from the Zaltharian capital and began its journey back to human space. Behind them, the greatest empire in galactic history began the process of collapse. And transformation. News of the surrender spread across the galaxy within hours. Enslaved races declared their independence. Trade routes opened to new possibilities. The age of human expansion into the stars had begun, and it had all started with one ship and 47 people who proved that sometimes the greatest victories come not from superior firepower, but from superior determination and the willingness to fight smarter rather than harder. The galaxy would never be the same.